Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, where you can awaken your mind to clarity and success even in today's life challenges. We're here to provide insights and solutions that will help you live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hello, everybody. This is Joanne Victoria with another amazing episode of the Sanity Project podcast. The listeners are here to discover a life of clarity, confidence, sanity, and entrepreneurial success. And our guest today, Craig Paul Anderson, is the perfect person for that. Craig's coaching practice pulls together over 25 years of leadership experience to work with CEOs and business owners to close the gap between where they are and where they want to be. His background, working for Fortune 100 companies, running a small business, and becoming a certified coach, provides him with experience, training, and expertise that few coaches bring to the table. Over his career, Craig learned what makes companies successful: planning, people, and processes. Scaling resources and programs from Fortune 100 companies, Craig grew the business from $500,000 to $5 million in 3 years, and it was named a great place to work. Welcome to the show, Craig P. Anderson.
Thank you, Joanne, and thank you for that kind introduction.
Well, it's true, right?
Every last bit of it. Every last bit of it.
Every last bit of it, including the commas. Yeah. So you're here for a variety of reasons, but you're here to help business owners start their company and grow their business, especially their leadership team, to have greater control of their business as revenue grows. What's the problem that business owners already have when revenue does begin to grow in their business?
Yes, it's what happens is you start a business, you're entrepreneurial, you have a great idea, you have a problem that you want to solve, and it's the right answer. And so you start to grow. You start to surround yourself with helpers who are there to do the work for you. And there's 5 or 6 of them. So you say, do this, do this, do this. Everything's working great. You have more success. Now suddenly, instead of 5 or 6 helpers, you have 10 or 12. Then you have 15. Then you have 20. And you're still trying to be the person telling all 20 of them what to do. And instead of being the person who's driving the business forward, now you've become the roadblock because everybody's looking to you and there's just too many people looking to you. And so the answer is, all right, I've got to get some people to help me run this. But the fear is, I have this vision of what I want my company to be, of how I want my employees treated, how I want my customers treated, how I want things done. And how can I do that if I have to do it through other people? And that becomes the dilemma I know I have to create a better way to do this, but I don't want to give up control and have my baby not go the way I want it to go. And that's where they start to struggle to say, all right, how do I start putting these pieces in place so I don't lose control, but I get out of the way? And I think that is the big challenge they start to face with success.
Well, getting out of your own way, of course, is what's necessary, but how do you help business owners do that? I mean, how do you convince someone who has given birth to the possibility, the opportunity, and the broad range of their product or service, and tell them they have to sit back a bit to let people do their thing?
It starts with something that's actually in the introduction to your show, the idea of clarity. So the first thing they really have to work towards is, one, they have to kind of get all these things that are in their head about the way they want things done out of their head and get really clear on what the vision is for the company. Where do I want the company to be in 3 to 5 years is usually a good time frame. I prefer closer to 3. Get to the point to say, these are kind of the key objectives, how we're going to measure success. This is how we do business, and this is how we establish priorities. And get that out of their head and then start to work to improve their communication so they can communicate those ideas to everybody and find a simple way to do that. So one, people understand, oh, that's how you want us to make decisions. That's how you want us to decide if we do this or that on a given day or hour or minute. And then they can start to see, oh, things are being done the way I want them done. to make sure they stay in control and stay on top of it, they also have to put in place the right dashboards. And don't anybody panic about dashboards, because I know people have things and they worry these are big, huge systems to put together, and they're not. But have those dashboards and check-ins that allow them to say, okay, I'm on top of the pulse of the organization. I'm having the right touch points with people so I know what's going on, but I'm not so wrapped up in all the details every day and putting out every fire that comes up that other fires are blazing because they're waiting for me to finish putting out this fire. And so it's really getting it out of your head and getting clear and communicating that. That's the way they have to start thinking, as opposed to just being the traffic cop who's making everything happen.
Years ago, I read Jeff Bezos, the man who founded whatever he founded.
Amazon.
Amazon, right. I'm just thinking there's so many things going on with all of those people. When he founded Amazon, he had an idea, and it was very non-specific. But what he did, rather than doing it all himself, he hired all of his college classmates. Mm-hmm. And he, with all of their specific specialties, to come on board to help him do ABC, XYZ. And it was interesting to see. I try to remember when I read it, but I thought, this is what you do. You hire to the position, but even the person that you hire knows more than what you hired them for.
Right.
People have a lot of skills that they would be willing to share, a lot more skills they would be willing to share once, as you said, they get to this point where the owner has created the systems and there's a checking in process and all of these policies and procedures and all of this stuff goes on. And somebody says, well, I can do that too as part of my job. And then somebody else pops up the same way because they now have freedom to speak.
Right. Right. Yeah. And getting those people on board, especially if you know the right people to bring on board. Another thing that I talk a lot to my clients about is to say, all right, you're doing everything, right? And there's some things that you're both good at and you really enjoy doing. There's some things you're good at that you don't enjoy. And there's some things that, despite how bad you are at it, you've managed to achieve this level of success.
Yeah, somehow.
So somehow, right? So let's be really brutally honest with ourselves to say, all right, what do I want to really focus my time and energy on? And then what are those tasks where I could really bring someone in who actually raises the level of the organization? And that starts to create your kind of cadence, because you're not going to hire a 6-person leadership team in a week, right? You really need to think about, where is the piece that I really need to fit first, and get that person on board. And then start building that team so that you actually have a complementary team around you, a well-rounded team, both out of skill set, as you noted, in a diverse skill set, but with a real core set, but also kind of the personalities. Because one of the things that I talk a lot about too is, there's some people who are just what we, in a system I work with, core values index, that are builders who just go. There's some people who are the merchants, who are the vision casters, and who are the ones who keep the team together, the innovators who come up with the ideas, and the bankers who manage the resources. You need to know that if I'm one of those, I need to find people in those other quadrants to also complement those aspects of the energy I bring to the table. So this building of the team is really a complementary exercise that strengthens the whole organization, because now you've got people who complement what you do, and it basically rises the tide of the organization, and the whole organization starts to get better as a result.
Oh, absolutely. It's just like putting any team together. They all must complement each other, and somebody's got to fill the right space. The problem is, most recently, in the last 5-10 years, I would say, that they hire to the same skill set. A lot of large corporations, they want this specific recipe filled. They want that. So they find 10 of those, and they're all they don't pay any attention. They're fighting each other. And then you're just left with ego.
Yes. And I was always kind of the odd man out in my corporate career. Mm-hmm. Here I was in, a Fortune 100 national banking firm with my English degree. So my perspective, I couldn't really dig deep down into a lot of the technical financial terms that all my colleagues with the MBAs had, but I could see to the truth of the problem in a way that necessarily they couldn't see, because they always had this, they were all trained in a similar manner to look at problems in a similar way.
They had their
And
protection.
Yeah, they had their protection and they had their filters on, right? That these problems, we look at everything as X's and O's. I used to pick at them at the tables during the financial crisis back in 08, 09. I said, if we had more people around the table with liberal arts degrees, maybe we would have thought of some of these problems ahead of time instead of just deciding, well, it's legal and it's profitable, so let's do it.
Right.
So there is a lot of value to having that diversity, background and thought and skill around you. So everything doesn't, what is it? When you're a hammer, everything's a nail.
Correct.
That's not always the case. You want somebody who's challenging your authority on a daily basis, but you do want to have people around you on the team that are challenging your perceptions and say, well, I kind of see it this way. And so that also becomes in that leadership discussion for the growing CEO to say, how much are you willing to set your ego to the curb to realize now you may not have every single answer nailed down? And that's a tough thing too, especially if you've had that early on success on your own.
Yeah, people who are stuck in their ones and zeros have a really difficult time understanding what you just said because they're focused on one thing and one thing only. And I prefer the larger view, broader view, bigger view, because then you get to see who's really good on the team and who you should keep and who obviously you need to get rid of. Because I used to manage some teams when I worked for small businesses. There was a time that I spent with alternative healthcare practitioners, and they would have big practices because alternative healthcare is probably a bigger West Coast phenom than any place else. And I would go in and go, how did they get all of these people? Because I was living in an area for myself specifically that everybody was pretty airy-fairy. Mm-hmm. So they had no foundation. Right. And I'm a Taurus with 5 planets in Taurus. I'm kind of here and grounded. And it was just a huge experience to me to have to go through this and find people just leaving over the first 6 months because there was no fit.
Right.
There was no fit, and there was no leadership either. So I had to deal with all of that.
Yeah, leadership is, a lot of people say, well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to be a leader. I want to be in charge. And so it's like, well, you really want to think through that. Think through that a little bit because there's a lot that comes with being a leader that you don't see until you're sitting in the chair. And people think leadership is just, well, I get to make all the decisions and nobody tells me what to do. And that's not leadership, right? Leadership is, 1, you're setting a vision. 2, you're building a team. 3, the other thing I don't think people realize until you're sitting in that chair is it's incredibly isolating and lonely, even though you've got people all around you. Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to you and nobody else can identify with that in the organization until they're really sitting there. So it's the first time leader, I think it's a big brain adjustment when you think it's one thing and then you're in the chair and you're like, holy cow, this responsibility is a lot heavier than I thought it would be.
Absolutely.
Because it is.
Well, and then some leaders, if they come through the ranks and they go from a manager to a leader, they think that leadership is management augmented, and it's not. Right. It's leadership is, there's so many facets to it that, and you even go back when we're talking about these people who are highly trained in these very narrow areas, where do people actually teach leadership in a lot of business programs? Maybe it's an extra class you can take from time to time, but it's that leadership and knowing that you've got all these responsibilities that, heck, I had at one point, I think 150 people working for me, and that felt like a lot of responsibility. And I used to think of the CEO of the place, with 100,000 people working for him. And I can't even imagine what that feels like. But you've got the responsibility for these people. You've got the importance of casting the vision, listening to your clients, listening to your employees. There's a whole lot that comes together with leadership, and then you're making decisions. And at the end of the day, it's your decision. So you're going to live and die with that decision, no matter how much that comes to you. Oh, yes.
So it's a weighty thing and I mean, I enjoyed my leadership roles very much, but it's not as easy as I think some people think, especially when you're in your 20s and you're kind of thinking, oh, well, they just don't know what's going on.
Right. Right.
I have two sons in their 20s, and I'm always like, guys, it's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah, they just think it's about telling other people what to do and sitting back and being glorious. And it's not. It's hard work. I mean, all of this is hard work. Starting your business is hard work. People put that aside. But a big part of being an entrepreneur, it's work. And not too many people are willing to work. That's what I'm finding. They just want the title. And whatever that title might be, I own my own business. Well, how many hours a week do you work? Oh, about 20. That's not work. That's not work.
I will say, and I'm sure you know this as well, I work far more hours now starting my own business and running this business than I ever did working for any of the big Fortune 100 companies that I've ever been a part of.
Oh, absolutely.
All the time. Yeah.
Because if you're not doing the work with the client, you're planning on doing the work with the client, or you're planning on finding more clients, or following up with your former clients to see if they still love you the way they did at the beginning. And, then having spare time to create up more marketing plans. Oh, let's have another podcast. Excuse me. These are all the things you have to do. But if you're an alleged leader in a large corporation, you don't have to do that. What you have are people who really need you, and have, when you create that vision, it has to include everyone.
Right. And that's actually an interesting point that you raised, because that was one of the things when I transitioned from corporate to growing this small business that I had was, all right, I know the reason these big companies are successful is they pay a lot of attention to detail. They have very defined processes and people strategies and planning. How do you do all that in a small business with not having 25 people sitting on the fourth floor who do nothing but do those things for you, right? So it was this idea of how can I create that kind of discipline around my business, but scale to the fact that, it's me and 20 other people, or me and 10 other people. When I started that business, there was probably 22 of us. When I finished, there was pushing up on 55. So we were able to start to add some of those things, but it was scaling that and keeping these ideas of the vision and the goals and the strategies and the hows of the business, and keeping them scaled small enough that we can communicate them effectively, and meaningful enough that we knew what was going on, which was always the tension.
Well, as you said a few minutes ago, part of it is a great deal of it is the clarity. And also you have, again, obviously, great strength. And, strength of mind, strength of will, strength of spirit. And that helps other people along their path to take chances and to take risks along their own path within your company. Because if you didn't present yourself as a strong human being, a strong individual, I don't think you would have reached these 10, 20, or 55 people.
Correct. Yeah, I think and you don't always see it within yourself when you're doing it, but it does when you look back into retrospect. It's like those people all relied on your strength at one point to pull them through. And, the challenges, to go back talking about the challenges of leaders, right, is everybody looks to you. So no one's going to show up into the office early if you're not showing up to the office, right? If you leave every day at 3:00, that tells everybody something. And so they want to see that you're there. I'll never forget, I took over a company not a company, but a big division one time that was pretty dysfunctional. And so I moved into the office of the person who I took over for. I realized after 3 or 4 days, I was like, this is so weird. My back is to the door. I never made eye contact with anybody for like a week. And I was like, this is so weird. And that's when I realized my back's to the door. How can I ever get people to buy into what I'm talking about and where I'm trying to take the company if they can't even see me every day? And so much of one of the greatest pieces of advice I had, and I actually, in the business I started, I actually put the team, the leaders in the middle of the building, and my office faced right out into kind of the common area, as it was a call center business. And I wanted to be able to see the people. And the great piece of advice I got is, hey, if you've got like 30 minutes a day of work that you can be interrupted in a lot, go do it in the break area where you actually interact with the employees, because you learn so much more about what's going on, and you can get to the root of the issue so much faster that way. And when they see you out there, they realize, oh, wow, he actually cares. He or she actually cares about what I think. And two, you're not putting on airs that, the leadership role doesn't mean like you're some, blessed by, the hand of God that you're better than everybody else, right?
If only.
It just means you've got more responsibility. You don't have every idea. So getting out in front of your team, and that's hard as you grow and you keep getting distracted. But when you lose touch with the people in the organization, you start to lose touch with a lot, and you start losing the pulse of the business. So that goes back to, even if you're going through a leadership team to get, to move the business through, still keeping those touch points. I mean, you can't always have your door open 10 hours a day or 8 hours a day, but always try and have it open a little bit because it's important.
It reminds me of years ago when I was in the real estate business. I was a real estate broker, and I was hired to be a manager for a new venue, and it was large, and I hired everybody and so on and so forth. And they said, and look what we have for you, Joanne. You have this nice, huge private office. And I go, nope, I'm not going to use it. I said, I'm sitting out there with everybody else. I'll sit in the back of the room, but that's where the people are. I have to watch them. I have to see who they are, how they operate, since they're all independent contractors. It's a little bit different than being a leader in a different type of corporation, but still there had to be some way for them to know that they couldn't sit there and gossip all day long. They had to produce, and I had to be the person who was encouraging them just by my presence. I saved the private office for pizza parties, but and private meetings or client, meetings. But you just can't get away from your people. You must be among them.
Yeah, it was fascinating to me. A company I worked for that had I would say the leadership team was a little bit out of touch, and they moved into a new office. And I went to visit the CEO after the fact, and I was like, I walked down to find the office, and, I could barely see his assistant, and you couldn't even see him. It was like tucked back around the corner at an angle. And I was like, is there any bigger message you can send to the people that you're not connected to them? You don't empathize or relate in any way, shape, or form. And, but dutifully every month there was a town hall meeting. I was like, that's really not enough.
No.
It's when you're that disconnected, and, you don't even see when people are going up in the elevator with you and you don't even know they work for you, it becomes a problem.
Well, I think what's going on today with COVID-19 and a lot of corporations being forced to do Zoom or other magical arrangement phone conversations, there's a little more openness. And since nobody's going to sit there that long in charge of a meeting, the stress is taken off the leader to a certain extent, and yet it gives them an opportunity, I would hope, to interact or at least be aware of all the people in front of them as real human beings. Mm-hmm. And I know that although before, the very, very large companies in our world, global companies, they already had these kinds of meetings. It was the only way they could have them. They had, hundreds of thousands of employees. So I don't know what's going to help, except for you. Craig Anderson is going to be the one helping leaders become good, great if possible, but certainly good and effective. So what can you leave our listeners with? Give us some strategies that they can implement now if they are a leader in a leadership role, or if they're working for a leader that they do or do not respect.
Oh, two big questions.
I know, but I know you can handle it.
The leader, if you're in a leadership role and you're scratching your head wondering why you can't get everybody rowing in the same direction at the same time, what I really encourage you to do is sit down and get really clear on your vision. Not, we're going to be a big company and we're going to be awesome. A vision statement for your company that says, in 3 years, we're going to serve this many clients. We're going to have this much revenue. We're going to have this much profit margin. We're going to have, this number of employees. And this is how and we're going to be known for these types of things. At the very least, get that clarifying vision. And then every time you're in front of the team, talk about it. You talk about it until you're so sick and tired of talking about it. And the very next time you mention it is when everybody will actually finally understand and hear it. So, if I'm going to leave you with one piece of advice, if you're the leader and you're trying to get everybody aligned, it's that. Get clear in the vision and bring it home every time you're talking to the employees, whether one-on-one or in the group. Make sure everybody really understands where you're going, because if they understand that vision and they can tie it to their role in the company, that's going to make them more effective for you. If you are the person who wants to lead and you're stuck behind a really terrible leader, there is always an opportunity for you to lead. If nothing else, it's how you show up every day. Are you showing up? Are you working hard every day? Are you rolling up your sleeves despite your bad manager, your bad leader, and doing everything you can to make the company successful, to make your career successful, to take care of your employees, and to take care of your clients? You, at a very minimum, you show leadership just by the way you show up every day. And when people see you around, there's a great book by a guy named, I can't think of the name of the book, but Bo Eason. He was an NFL player who started at a small high school in the middle of nowhere out west somewhere. And he was small, he was undersized, but he worked harder than anybody. And the team got better because they saw his example. And it turns out from this small high school he went to, 7 kids made the NFL.
Amazing.
It's that one person, even if you can always lead, even if you're not in a leadership role. And it's by how you show up, and it's how hard you work and your attitude and your perseverance. So that's my advice to the second category of person that you mentioned.
Well, I appreciate that, because I think that people have forgotten that showing up, number one, is important, but how you show up is vital. How you present yourself to the rest of the people, and no matter what is going on around you, the gossip, the kvetching, all of the stuff, the complaints that is going on, you're focusing on your job. People notice that. There's an energy about that, and it expands, and other people pick up on that and expands even further. That person may never become the leader they think they should be, but they will certainly influence the people around them.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, I want to make sure before we get to the end of this that I remind everybody that is listening to listen to this podcast again. Because no matter where you're listening to this, if you're on your desktop, on your phone, whatever, you have not taken notes. When you do the repeat of the podcast, take notes. Because this is important. Craig is giving you years of experience and success, and you don't want to miss anything about it. And be sure and go to Apple Podcasts and leave Craig P. Anderson a 5-star review, and you can also leave the Sanity Project podcast a 5-star review. The more reviews we get, the more people will want to listen to the podcast. Anyway, what are you going to leave our listeners with, Craig?
Well, if you haven't been able to tell already, I have a little bit of passion around this topic of leadership. I have created a forum, a community where we talk about these issues all the time, where we provide training and we provide insight into these issues, in a community where you can talk about them. So I would invite everybody to join us at clearpathcoaches.com/community. We would love to have you join us so you can join into the conversation and we can make everybody a better leader, because the world needs strong, positive, powerful leaders right now.
No kidding. And if the listener is watching or listening to this podcast on my website, which is where it will first appear, you will have your own page, and you will see that there's going to be a link to this leadership forum right there underneath Craig's bio. So I want to thank Craig Anderson for being here today. It's been a great guest, super topic, very important topic. People don't understand how much we really need true leadership in our world. And it's sad that we don't have much right now. I shouldn't say any, but certainly not much. And for those of you who want to go to my website at askjoannevictoria.com/podcast, you will see there an opportunity to get a free book called The True Self Handbook, a guide to transform your life. Thanks, Craig, for being here today. It's been a great interview, and I'm so glad you decided to accept my invitation.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. See you next time.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to askjoannevictoria.com to listen to more podcasts. Check out Joanne's coaching programs and get a free copy of her report, 5 Steps to Achieve Life-Work Harmony. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.